Hello, hello. As always, let's get that sound check going. I got my coffee ready. Glad you guys can join. You know that this is a huge blowout December. Already 57 videos have been uploaded to Archaix. You already see that they've been dropping every day. Starting on the 13th, 2 a day will drop. On Christmas, 4 are already scheduled to drop. I told you guys I'm catching you up on all the old data dumps are being brought to you, edited down. All the intros, outros, all the extraneous material, obiter dictum, everything that doesn't belong has been removed. Excellent. We got a special guest today. I have been talking to her backstage for like an hour and 45 minutes. Got to know her pretty well. This is Eileen McKusick. I don't have any other than Archaix Underground. There's no announcements, guys. I'll bring Eileen straight onto the stage and we can get this started. How you doing, Eileen?
Hey, Jason. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm feeling good. I got my coffee going. It's beautiful Texas weather. Yeah, I'm awesome. Pretty unique experience. I've never done anything. I'm 52 years old, and I have never ever gone through any. I understand there's a whole movement of different types of treatments and all kinds of techniques, and I've never experienced anything like that. It is my first. This is my virgin experience
of a Biofield tuning session, which we just did.
Of any session, of anything, really. I'm not, I've never indulged in anything. So that was very interesting. You nailed several things and the exact time of my life. So I'm certainly on board, especially with your explanation of the non-local aspect of healing. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, because we did it over StreamYard here, and a lot of people, when they hear about sound healing from a distance, it sounds pretty far out and improbable. And I felt that way too about it until I actually tried it and discovered that it worked. So
yeah, so once you get, there's a lot of people in my community who they're not going to know exactly. Well, you're going to have to start with baby steps here. Basically, like you did with me, your published books, your research and history, you might want to run that down you got plenty of time. We're in no hurry.
All right. Well, I started using tuning forks back in 1996. And I came to them because I had set off on my own healing journey of reading nonfiction when I was 18. And as we all know here, as followers of Jason and all probably researchers ourselves, that research is often a trail of crumbs, and one book or idea leads you to the next and to the next. And so by 1996, my trail had led me to vibrational healing, the use of color and sound and music in healing. And I went out and I bought all the books I could find, and there weren't many back then. There's so many more now. And by the time I got through the end of that stack, I got a catalog in the mail that had a set of tuning forks for healing. It's a C major scale. And at the time I was doing massage therapy part-time. And so I just started playing with the forks with my clients. I had no idea what I was doing. So many people say to me, I have tuning forks, but I don't know what to do with them. And I didn't know what to do with them either, but I wasn't afraid to experiment and find out. And even right off the bat, when I didn't have a clue of what I was doing, people started reporting that they felt better, that they had less pain, less anxiety, they slept better, they didn't fight with their spouse. So they'd come back for a massage and then they'd say, do that tuning fork thing again. And so in pretty short order, I put down massage and just held on to the forks. But this was in Connecticut in the 90s. And telling people that I was doing sound healing with tuning fork met with a lot of skeptical resistance. I'm like backhanded, just nonsense. And nobody likes to have that kind of response directed at them. So it certainly wasn't anything I ever wanted to do for a vocation, but it was a really interesting hobby. And in the course of, so I did that for 10 years, just part-time, maybe 1 or 2 people a week, if that. And certainly nothing that I wanted to pursue beyond that. And then one day in 2006, I had something happen that really changed everything, that changed the course of my life. And that was in the beginning, I was just holding the tuning forks right over the body. I'd sort of scan around the body and I would just listen to the feedback. And right off the bat, I noticed that the sound would change in volume, in pitch, and timbre. Sometimes it would sound like it was full of static. Sometimes it would go really sharp, like it was full of alarm. And when I started telling people about this, they were like, oh, that's room acoustics, or oh, that's the Doppler effect. And I was like, well, I get those things, but there's something else going on. When what I didn't understand, which I understand now, is that everything in the body is in motion, and everything in motion makes waves, and waves propagate. And I was actually able to hear to some degree what was going on in the body through these subtle emanations that would interact with the overtones and undertones of the fork. And so I discovered that in some areas it would go loud. And I was working with a fork set that was related to the chakras. And so I decided that if a chakra was an energy center, if it was going to sound loud anywhere, it should sound loud over the energy center. And I made this very curious discovery that I could actually move the loud spots. And I called it click, drag, and drop. We still call it click, drag, and drop. So if I was working over someone and there was really loud over their shoulder, but really quiet over their midline, I could click into the loud spot, I could drag it to the middle, and I could drop it there. And then it wouldn't be loud over here anymore. It would be loud here. And so that was my practice. It was really simple practice of just finding loud spots and dragging in the center. And when I was done, people would say things like, I feel really centered right now. And so that was that. But then in 2006, I accidentally discovered a loud spot about 2.5 feet off of somebody's neck. And this person was complaining that they had a sense of pain and pulling in their jaw, down their neck, and into their shoulder. And they'd been to see all kinds of providers and nobody had sorted it out. So when I discovered this loud spot hovering in space next to the body, it was very peculiar. I wasn't really sure what to do, but I've been bringing everything to the midline. So that's what I did. And it felt so strange, like, what am I even doing here? But then I dropped it and it felt like it got sucked in by the throat. And then she called me the next day and she said, Eileen, all of that pain and pulling is gone. And so that was so fascinating to me. I was like, well, what is going on here? And so I started investigating the atmosphere around the body. And over the next 4 years, I actually mapped this terrain. There's this whole topography that's invisible, sort of hidden in plain view, that is now what I call the biofield. But the biofield is essentially your body's electrical system. We all know we have electric current in us. Our heartbeat is electric, our brain waves are electric. Anything that has electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. So the aura or the human energy field is simply a magnetic field of the body. But what I was really surprised to discover was a few things. So I discovered that this field had a boundary layer about 6 feet away, and sort of started to uncover and discover that it was a bubble, or more specifically, a torus. And what I found as I was moving the fork through the field and the sound would change and the texture would change and I'd hit resistance, where I started to realize that what I was encountering were memories. Now, we've all been told that our memories are in our brain, but here I was finding them in this atmospheric bubble around our body, in this very specific anatomy and physiology. Now, I started to realize that this outer membrane contained the record of gestation. Just inside that was birth. And if I was working with someone who was, say, 40 years old, I was finding memories that were generated when they were 20, about 3 feet away, and memories that were current or recent or current experience in close to the body. So in this model, the body is actually inside the mind. So I would call our biofield, our electrical system, our mind. So it's where our conscious thoughts are, all our memories are stored, our ancestors' memories are in here, sort of like the blueprint of the body. And that traumatic memories sounded really dissonant and distorted, and that the simple act of holding a tuning fork in that very specific area would support the body in basically tuning itself. That whatever chaos was going on would settle down, energy that was stuck or frozen would release, and then I could comb it back into the midline. And so that is the essence of biofield tuning, is working with this map that I discovered. And this came from sort of observing that everybody who came in with particular issues in particular areas had a similar underlying mental or emotional struggle that they were going through. Like everybody who had right hip issues had a busy mind. They overthought, they overdid. They were always sort of amped up with to-do lists and this sort of thing. And that then when you create an imbalance in your mind, you create an imbalance in your magnetic field, which then informs your body. Everything starts in the mind and then precipitates down into the more dense stuff. So in 2007, I went back to college as an adult and got my undergraduate and graduate degrees and wrote a master's thesis called Exploring the Effects of Audible Sound on the Human Body and its Biofield. And then that became my first book, Tuning the Human Biofield. I started teaching in 2010. And as of this year, we've trained almost 4,000 people worldwide in this method. Yeah. It's so elegant, it's really non-invasive. It's really gets right into stuff. It gets into stuff like precognitive stuff, because so much of what informs us is birth trauma, is those first 3 to 5 years that we don't remember. We form a lot of beliefs and patterns that then affect the rest of our life. So this ability to go in and pinpoint specific memories within the memory bank and help them to resolve, to settle, to integrate, to digest can be really powerfully transformative in the way that I think many people are looking to transform, to get unstuck, right? I would say that the biggest thing that I treat is stuckness. And that is literally energy, literally stuck in your biofield, frozen, that we're able to jimmy loose and send back into circulation.
So energy always moving, you're basically describing that there is something folding back in on someone, like a feedback loop, and you're releasing them of that.
Yeah, it's like a knot or a tangle, a stuck area.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna take a time to interject real quick. I entered this very critical because that's who I am. I am always armored against anything I come in contact with until it passes my litmus tests. So you and I spent an hour and 45 minutes, and I let you talk, and I gave you a bunch of feedback when you nailed exact times in my life when I was going through the very things you were experiencing. However, you received that information while you were using different forks. I get it. You're reading the field. You're reading my field. But there was a couple incidents where like I said, I'm armored. So if there is an easy explanation, like Occam's razor, for you guessing something accurately, I can dismiss it. But there are two things you said that couldn't be dismissed. A lot of what you brought to my attention, if you would have like a dossier on my life, you could have pulled that off. But I don't think you do. However, you did mention two things. One, we didn't even discuss. You mentioned the tension around my right foot, and you never let me tell you what that was. You also nailed the neck. And I haven't told anybody about my injury about 2 months ago, but I've had a crick in my neck for like 2 months, and you nailed that. But little things like that, things about my general history, anything that I've already slipped up and said in public that's been recorded on YouTube, I can dismiss that because I can be critical. But there are other elements of your revelations that we did before this show that were pretty impressive. I just didn't say anything to you. You pretty much nailed several things, whether they were intrinsically personal or not. So reading the field, quantum non-locality, the principles of the dynamic involved of healing from a distance are not, they're not abstruse. They're not even a mystery to me. So I'm on board with everything you're talking about. But it's not just the forks. I say this all the time, Eileen, that even with tarot and astrology, it's always the man, not the means. So I'm not being critical. What I'm saying is you have a unique gift. It's obvious. But do you think that someone else can do what you do to the degree of success that you do it? Because this has a lot to do with you personally than any type of mechanism that you've discovered.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. back when I was about to start teaching my first class, one of my brothers asked me, he's like, can other people learn to do what you do? And I was like, well, I don't know. I'll figure it out. But by that time, I had the Biofield anatomy map all mapped out so that people didn't necessarily have to understand what it was they were encountering. Like, that's sort of my unique gift. And it was very interesting the way that it came to me, Jason, because when I was first exploring the field and I didn't understand it, it was really sort of like a blind fumble in the dark with momentary flashes of illumination. And I would see a pattern, or I would get an aha or an insight into what was going on. It's sort of like teaching myself Sonic Braille. And but I'd get into an area and all of a sudden it would be like a note dropped into my mind, and it felt like it came from the back of my head, like just below the occiput ridge. It was like there was a little mail slot there, and the mail slot would open and this little note would drop in, and it would say something like sadness, age 10. And I would say to the person, did something really sad happen when you were 10? And they'd be like, oh yeah, that was when my grandmother died and we were really close, and da 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 da, right? So I always wondered, like, how do I know all these things? Like, where is this knowing coming from? How is it that these, I'm not really the sort of person on like believing guides or that sort of thing, So it was kind of a big mystery to me where this information was coming from. Like, do I know this already somehow? Like, I didn't really understand it. I was at a conference in 2014 and I met a woman. Her name is Tiffany Barsotti, and she was talking about how there's a minor chakra exactly in that area called the Alta Major that's been described as the mouth of God or the word of God. And I was sitting in that lecture, I'm like, that's my mail slot. So, it came to me. It came to me, and it enabled me to create the Biofield anatomy map. But there's another piece of this that's really interesting, and that was sort of the discovery that every particular emotion and every pathology made a very specific sound that was the same from person to person. So if you and I were listening to a sad song, Jason, I wouldn't have to say to you, Jason, this song is sad, because you'd be like, duh, Eileen, like, yeah. I can tell the song is sad, right? So it's the same with the tuning forks. When they get into a sad memory, when we were generating those sad feelings, I can hear it in the overtones and the undertones, and it sounds sad. And there's many different expressions of sadness: melancholy, loneliness, heartbreak, deep grief. Like, they all have different subtle differences to them. And so this language of vibration is very consistent from person to person. And that recognition of that sounds or feels like a particular emotion that I recognize with my own emotional intelligence. But I also observed that every pathology did. Like, arthritis has a particular sound, right? So this is kind of like sonar or radar or LIDAR, ultrasound. We're bouncing sound off a topography and then listening to the ping back, and it comes back with information. So if you have an arthritic joint on one side and not the other, we can hear, you and I can both hear when we're in person and sometimes over Zoom, that there's a grainy quality where somebody has arthritis, right? So anything that you can think of, like hardened arteries or fatty liver or Crohn's disease, like, everything has a particular sound that it makes. So it's a language. And so people learn the language over time, right? Like, if you and I ended up in Mongolia, after a little while, we'd be like, oh, that sound means that, and that sounds means that. And the more experience and exposure we have to those sounds, the more we come to recognize what they mean. So there is a science to this, an objective science and an objective language that everybody learns over time. Now, some people are more intuitive or more tapped in than others, but with experience, people tend to get it. And that's just, when you're learning anything. Now, I think mastery really comes, I think it took me like 15 years, 10,000 hours writing a master's thesis, teaching people, before I really started to get deep into the nuance of stuff, right? And that's the difference in mastery, is the understanding and the ability to work with subtleties and nuance. So I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, and I'm just very, very fluent in the language of vibration. I really understand the forks, but But anyone can learn it, just like anyone can learn another language.
Okay, I get it. I'm the same way when it comes to reading any type of historical text. By the time I'm done with the text, I've already rewritten it in sequential order. You know, a lot of the things a lot of times when we're reading someone's version of history, they're going to go back and forth many times, and it just confuses a lot of people as to the sequence of events. But I've always had a knack for putting everything into perspective sequentially, and it helps me process information. It helps me teach others exactly what I see. So I get it. So you answered that question that yes, you probably could teach somebody this, but they're going to have to put in the work like you did. So I get it. This is a good time to introduce your books. I know you've written a couple books.
Yeah. So I wrote Tuning Human Biofield. This I wrote in 2014. It was published in 2014. I had to introduce an entirely new cosmological story in order for what I was doing to make sense. Because we learn about solid, liquid, and gas, but we never learn about plasma and ether. And so I had to introduce this cosmology of connection of light, the fact that the body has an electrical system, that your magnetic field is a bioplasma, that our atmosphere is a plasma, that the ether exists, even though we've been told that it hasn't. That's the model I use for describing how distance healing works, resonance in the ether. So a lot of the book is sort of laying the cosmological foundation and framework for how and why this approach to healing works the way that it does. Because if you just do it in the world of solid, liquid, and gas, it doesn't make any sense. And it was my uncovering of ether, of actually plasma in 2010, that really opened the door to my understanding of what was going on, because it was all very puzzling. Like, I didn't understand when I was moving the fork through the field and I hit against what felt like resistance. It felt like mass. It felt like stuff. And I was like, well, what is this stuff? What do I call it? And what law of physics determines that a vibrating tuning fork can move it? It was so perplexing to me, so intriguing. And it wasn't understood that sound has electromagnetic properties. It generally isn't understood. This is Eileen's assertion that sound has electromagnetic properties just through observation, and that the field is a plasma. So the how to use tuning forks in this book is really only one chapter, because biofield tuning is so simple. It's a process of basically moving from the outer edge of the field, combing in slowly until you hit resistance or hear intense noise, staying there until the body fixes itself, and then moving along to the midline. It's a sort of drop in, and then pulling away from the body. And that's it. Like, it couldn't be more simple. People are always like, well, how do you treat this? How do you treat that? I'm like, zoop, zoop. That's how you do it. Because the body is a self-tuning instrument, and it's designed for harmony, and that it will retune itself with the input of a simple tuning fork. So there's not a lot.
You're not saying anything that's alien to what I promote already. I don't really promote all the healing and stuff and all that, but toroidal field dynamics is part of the substrate of the Archaix teachings, because without it, people wouldn't understand the nature of the construct. So you showed us the metal toroidal field. Okay, well, in the Archaix model, our whole world of experience is on a plane that is exactly in the middle of that toroidal. Hold that toroidal deal up. If we were to go east to west on that and create our own ecliptic, we're on a plane there, and we're looking up into one of the inside of the domes of the toroid field that looks to us like stars, space, galaxies, and all that. And I've often postulated that this is a world, and this world flips in polarity, and there's an exchange of information with another world almost just like ours, and that the toroidal field that we often hold sideways like you just did is actually north to south on an axis, and that when we flip, these convergence fields form, and there's an exchange between worlds, but it's all toroidal field dynamics. So the plasma doesn't bother me, because as a information field, when information begins to crystallize, because information is flowing. You can call it the odic force, because this is what Reichenbach called it over a century ago. It's the same thing as the ether of the mystics, and also now science is entertaining the etheric field. So this holographic nature of reality, it's actually commensurate with your whole tuning fork, this whole vibrational mechanics, because this experience that we're having would not work without the principles of non-locality, and it wouldn't especially work with bilocality, because this is what you're really describing. You're really describing what you're doing in a vibrational field with your informed field, reading the field of tuning forks while you're concentrating on a field far away. In the field, there's no distance between souls. In the world of experience, we perceive vast distances of thousands of miles, hundreds of miles, or whatever. So everything you're saying is totally 100% within the Archaix model of reality. Even the toroidal field descriptions, even the vibration, even trees and forests are electrical systems, and they too sing. If you could hook audio equipment up to them, you could hear the songs of the trees. You could hear another song, which is all the trees together singing together. You could hear individual mycelium songs. Everything puts off music. So I'm on board. I'm on board with the theory 100%. It's just that me being I'm very critical of individuals, not concepts. So you have pretty much proven to me that you know your shit, and that's all, and that's awesome. But you also know I'm very critical of many people who are just being grifters in the field. And this is something that you have to watch out for, because when you're doing something as unique as what you're doing, you're always going to have people accusing you of being a bullshitter. And I get it.
Well, and I've definitely been through that. And that was why I never wanted it to be my vocation, because it seems so airy-fairy, hippy-dippy, fruity, griftery. And I certainly never would have had the courage to go out in the world unless I was very, very solid in knowing that it worked. I mean, I worked with so many people and had so many experiences and went far and wide and deep in my research in order to create a framework that made sense within larger frameworks.
Right.
The fractal nature of reality and plasma physics, like everything had to hang together. And so when people read Tuning the Human Biofield, everybody says the same thing. They're like, well, this makes sense. It resonates because I made sure that it fit in with all of these other things that we understood. But, it's really interesting. When I was mapping the field and discovering it, I really felt like there was an elliptical plane at the midline. There's like almost another axis here, right? Yeah. So I could feel that as well. And I agree with your description of the realm, because it fits in with all of these other models too. It makes sense.
Well, it's why the flat Earth movement can find so much evidence of living on a flat plane, but yet they can also be criticized of all the evidence of sphericity that is found in the sky. So with the moon, the sun, with phases of the moon, with the periodicity of comets and how they arc across. They don't pass over the sky. They always pass in an arc. So these things show that there's a circular motion going on as well. But this to me is just the toroidal field in a spin. And it's a spin at 3.14, which never closes, which is 1.618. And these two combined together are basically the answer for how there's so much motion, and it's always circular, yet the circle never closes. It's cycles within cycles and epicycles. And every model of the world can be defended. You can always come up with more and more evidence to defend your position as to how the world really is. And that in itself is proof that we're in some type of mathematical construct. Because if we were living in a totally opaque, a totally finite world with physics constants that were absolutely knowable, and not amorphous, as you have demonstrated, then it's an easily discoverable universe. And an easily discoverable universe eventually would have no mysteries. That's not where we live. We live in a world, we live in some type of construct that can perpetuate mysteries where none exist, and can even provide you evidence for whatever model of the universe you believe yourself to live in.
Yeah, that's what my husband says when we talk about the shape of the realm. He's like, it's so much of it is perception. It is flat, it is round, it is both, and beyond.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I don't mind believe me, I've gotten deeply personal with my own community. So I don't mind if you want to share some of the things that you were reading about me. I've got no secrets.
All right. Yeah, I'm happy to share. So one of the things that I was really struck by when I was reading Jason's field was he was born into a blizzard, like an energetic, chaotic blizzard. But from the outset, and I realized this sort of like as soon as I got into his field and I started listening, I felt my third eye light up and become very bright. And I felt this God presence with him, that even though he had been through some incredible difficulty, that there was this thread of connection to God that was very strong and very clear, and really was evident that it helped him to get through all of the difficult things that he went through. And no, I feel that sort of connection in a lot of people, but in Jason, it was very bright. It was very strong. It was very, very evident. And of course he concurred that was his inner experience as well. So I thought that was really neat. Everybody's field is very unique. Obviously, everybody's life is very unique. And one of the really neat things about doing this work is that, yes, it enables me to find the traumas and the difficulties that people have gone through. And I can hear those sorts of things very clearly. But it also reveals to me the gifts of their soul, the ways in which they're uniquely beautiful, brilliant, amazing. And everybody is without exception, and everybody is in their own unique way. And I also has a sort of a glimpse into that this isn't the first time that Jason has been here being a deep researcher and a deep scholar, that it was very sort of patterned into his soul. And that also, when I got kind of close to his body and was reading now, I didn't quite realize that Jason was in the process of uploading so many videos but that's how it felt. Like all around his right foot, I was like, oh my God, there's so many projects. There's so many things. There's so much going on right here in front of you. But then there's something beyond that. Like you have to complete this. And then there's like this next level that you're going to. And, yeah, and he concurred, right? So the language of everything that we've ever experienced and who we are and even where we're headed is all encoded in the vibrational topography of the field. And I knew that Jason had gone to prison when he was 17, right? That's a story that he tells a lot. But I got stopped in his field at 16, which is a story I'd never heard. I'm like, I'm not at 17 yet. And he told me the story of what happened there, which I found really interesting. And then the whole story, Jason, of what happened to you, the external events, like with the judge and then Bush wanting to fill up those for-profit prisons, and how circumstances really conspired to keep you there so much longer than you were supposed to. And yet it was very clear, like that was what was supposed to happen in order for you to do the work that you've come here to do. That unless those things hadn't happened, you wouldn't be sitting here right now being who you are and doing.
I've mentioned that many times on my channel. Listen, even though in retrospect I like to bitch and complain that it is almost inconceivable that this series of events would have happened at the exact same time I'm about to come up for parole. Then all this new laws get passed that keep me in prison 7 years longer. And then it's just so ridiculous that in retrospect, everything was exactly the way it was supposed to be. So the whole time I'm doing this time, my father saving all that research, putting it in the attic, and me not quite knowing if everything I've done in the past was saved, because I am, Dad says it's safe, but you never know. So you never know when you provide somebody something of great value to you, and to me, a whole year's worth of research and writing and putting notes together was extremely valuable to me. But I'm in prison; I can't keep it; it's too much property. Only allowed a certain amount of property, so he would take these things home. And to be reunited with all that after decades when the project started was awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. What really struck you that I unveiled? I know you said about the crick in your neck, right? And so the way that I can tell that is that I'm sort of holding the fork up above the top of his head and sending sound down, just his hologram, right? Because he's over there and I'm over here, and I can just hear it and see it. Remember, this is like sonar, and so the sound is bouncing off the topography, and so I could very clearly feel what a crick. Like that's how he described it. I'm like, oh,
Yep.
maybe to see a chiropractor here. So we hit that, and then I got to his mouth, and I was like, wow, there's something really big going on in his mouth.
Yep.
And I asked him if he had jaw or clenching.
That was another one that kind of stood out to me because the way you described it. But yeah, I do have a very unique condition, and I haven't really shared it a lot. I did show you a little bit, but I had showed Dawn couple years ago, and she freaked out and started telling everybody online. But yeah, I do have hyperdontia, and it's also called double dentition. I have 2 rows of teeth, and it's just, I've shared it in probably 7 or 8 different videos. I never really make a big deal about it, but it seems to have been something that the Smithsonian was really interested in the 1880s and 1890s, because they were uncovering a lot of human skeletons in North America that had the exact same condition. And then, of course, you have your biblical material that refers to giants with double rows of teeth and all that. But yeah, it's I was explaining, Eileen had never heard. I don't stop growing teeth. I'm growing teeth now, and teeth have to be pulled or they'll come out looking like vampire teeth, because the root systems and molars look like this. And new teeth grow in, they will grow perfectly because the roots are just as hard as the teeth. And the new teeth are soft and malleable. When they grow up, they look like fangs if you don't have the older molars removed fast enough. So yeah, when I was in prison, I didn't have access to the dentist like I do now. And it became a problem. Constant headaches, constant jaw aches, and all that. So yeah, you nailed it when you said that there was a storm in my mouth, because I'm always growing new teeth. My baby teeth are all gone. My original adult teeth are mostly gone. They've mostly all been replaced. And this is just, it's like 1 in 35 to 37,000 people have this condition, but it's called hyperdontia. And mine's really organized. I've seen some bad cases of hyperdontia, really bad cases. Where the teeth grow in all different directions. Mine's pretty organized, pretty clean, double set of teeth.
Yeah, when I asked him what was going on with his mouth, he's like, well, you wouldn't be able to tell. and it's true. Like, I could tell that there was something unusual and difficult going on there, but I never in a million years would have guessed that it was that condition. So
yeah, well, the right foot, the neck one was interesting, because I'm analytical. If you were to isolate a certain area of my anatomy, it automatically gets me counting my areas. Okay, well, head, neck, shoulders, 2 arms, 2 hands. I've got 2 feet. I've got 2 legs. My legs are bifurcated in between below the knee and above the knee. I can probably isolate 16 different parts of my anatomy, but you nailed the neck. And the neck is where I've been having problems. It's you said the neck and the right foot. So the neck in the past 2 months, yeah, I don't know what I did. It had something to do with carpentry here on my property, but I got a crick in my neck and it just keeps coming back. And what's really strange is that the day that I'm talking about it, I haven't felt it at all. I haven't felt it at all today, but it's been bothering me for 2 months. So you mentioned the right foot, and before this video started, I didn't say anything. I just let you kept on talking, I just never brought it to your attention. But yeah, my right foot is the only foot that I ever sprain. And it's kind of like a joke with me and those close to me. They all know. I said, man, anytime I sprain my ankle or anytime I injure myself, it's always my damn right foot. It's never broke my foot. I've never had a broken bone in my body despite all the accidents and all the violence. Even motorcycle accident, falling off a 3-story house. Never had a broken bone in my body. But I don't know what it is. Contract job, sports, playing, whatever I'm doing, even doing something as simple as walking down the sidewalk, I keep twisting my right ankle. What it is.
So, well, it's interesting. So in Biofield Tuning, if somebody doesn't have a particular complaint, oh, my left shoulder hurts or whatever it is, in order to do an adjustment, right? And it is kind of like chiropractic, where we're kind of adjusting the magnetic field. So magnetic fields guide and inform electric currents. And so when we do a magnetic field adjustment, it changes the way electricity is running through the body. It can bring instant relief to people who are in a lot of pain. But if we're not sure exactly where we want to work, we use a pendulum. And so a pendulum is just a little tool that my subconscious or my superconscious mind knows way more than my conscious mind. It is my body that is using it. It's a way for my superconscious to connect. And so I did a scan through his hologram, and the right foot was what asked to be worked on. It was the most clear. And the right foot in the biofield anatomy relates to our next steps and the degree of certainty or uncertainty that we feel, but also the history, right? And I know, Jason, your early years were extremely uncertain and very difficult and didn't have a lot of containment. And even your experience in prison, was not, it kept changing. And so there's just a lot of distortions, interruptions, difficulty, noise in the field in that particular area. And I've definitely observed that people tend to get injuries and accidents in areas where the field is highly disordered. It's just normal. Just for an example, I have a girlfriend, and at the time she owned a massage therapy school. She was a massage therapist. She was an adjunct professor at 2 colleges, and she was a single mom. Now, the right shoulder in this work relates to being an accommodator, somebody who's taking care of others, saying yes when we mean no, but a lot of like caregiving and caretaking of others at the expense of self. And she called me one day and she said, Eileen, I was out hiking and I fell. Where do you think I injured myself? And I said, your right shoulder. And she said, yep, that's exactly where it was. So the weaknesses in the field make us more prone to injuries or accidents in the physiology.
Yeah, well, I'm left dominant. I'm left-handed. I write all my creative, all my illustrations. I'm a black and white ink illustrator. I've drawn thousands of drawings over my lifetime. Many of the illustrations in Archaix are mine. So let's see. I write. If I'm fighting, I'm also dominant. I'm southpaw. I'm also dominant with my fist. But yeah, my right ankle is the one that's always getting, and it's the weirdest times. It's when I least expect it. I'm paying attention to something else, and most of the time, I'm not even doing anything strenuous.
So I'll be curious to see if post adjustment that you might be less inclined to injure yourself in that area.
Yeah, I normally walk it off, but it's just something that's been happening all my life. Yeah, and if it doesn't happen anymore, yeah, we'll have to we'll certainly have to take that into consideration, no doubt, because it's something that happens once or twice a year. That's all very interesting. So you did nail some things that like I said, if you had a dossier on my life, you could have gotten through about 70% of that. But there's about 30% in there, man, that was all reading the field, because it's not stuff that's really publicly known.
Mm-hmm. And that's what people always say when they get a session from me. They're like, how do you do this? Like, how is it possible that you would know this? But when you have an understanding of the anatomy and then the language of vibration, it isn't, I wouldn't say it's intuitive. No, it's very objective in the knowing. Like there's a whole pattern and science behind it. And it makes sense in a physics perspective, right? So this is a physics-based approach to health, working with the body's electrical system, as opposed to a chemical mechanical approach, working with the body's chemistry. Right. And it's kind of an evolutionary leap in perspective that's far less invasive. And, just when you think about what I can do, just poking tuning forks around the field, it's really kind of primitive and kind of simple. But it opens the door to a whole new realm of biofield medicine.
Well, it also reminds me that, we have books from the 1800s where they're swearing up and down. Like the U.S. Geological Survey, before it was called that, there was different departments of different state governments, and these are government operations, but they're hiring dowsers that go out into the land with dowsing rods and literally tell them where the water and mineral deposits are. Mm-hmm. So would the dowsing be very similar to what you're describing here with tuning forks?
Well, the dowsing is working with electromagnetic currents. Water carries electric charge, and creates subtle harmonics above it. So it's it's the same thing. It's just working with subtle magnetism, and the fact that our bodies respond to it. That we have far more sensitivity in our subconscious than we do in our conscious. So it is a similar thing. And also in the late 1800s, it was very well understood that the body had an electrical system. Right, you could buy devices for your electric health out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog. So this notion...
I've shown the 1898 Sears Roebuck catalog on my channel. I have a whole video dedicated just going through the pages, showing all the amazing stuff.
Yeah. So it wasn't like the idea that the body is electric is anything new. It was just very intentionally hidden from us.
Right. I agree. I have a silver bell. I've got a few of them. This is just one. I got 3 or 4 bells. Also, hanging outside my studio, I have an outdoor kitchen patio that's covered, and I have this old bell from the 1800s I bought from an antique shop. But it's real heavy, and it just hangs down. It doesn't have a real good ring. I don't like the ring because the inner... What is this part called? Whatever the middle part is. What's it called?
A clapper? I don't know.
I guess the clapper. And this one right here, it looks like it's a modern piece of iron that somebody installed inside. It's not original to the bell. But I have, this is designed to tie string around it right here. This is all solid silver bell. I like this one. It has a long ring. If you hang it on the string like it's supposed to and then tap it, it rings for a long time. I'm holding it, so I'm dampening it. But would you be able to do that instead of using dowsing rods? What if you had different magnitudes of bells, different metal densities and all that?
It's interesting. My son bought a whole box of small bells at an antique store, and I have them sitting in my closet here, and I haven't played with them. But certainly with something like a singing bowl, which is a similar idea, if you have a bad hip and I place a singing bowl next to your hip and I bang it, there's going to be distortion in the tone. If I put it over on the other side and I bang it, we won't hear that distortion. So really, I think any instrument, even voice, like I took a little class once that involved a similar idea to the tuning forks, this idea of bouncing sound off, except using the voice. And it was a process of making the ooh sound and just walking up and down the person's body, just going ooh. And then whenever you hit a funky spot, your own voice would break. Right? But that's a really weird thing to do to somebody. Like I'd much rather have a tuning fork in the mix, right? But this idea of working in the field around the body to break up areas that are stagnant, that are stuck or frozen, and reintroduce flow is not so different than the medicine man with the rattle, with the drum, with the song, right? Dancing around the body, breaking up that bioplasmic stagnation and helping to introduce flow, right?
These bells, I want to interject with this. The bells are such a mystery. You have the Tartarian narrative where they say the bells were removed for all kinds of reasons. I don't know, because the only thing I've read was at the same time that they were removing bells was because everywhere that there was large bells installed, this is when we began installing glass windows. So at the exact same time in history, glass windows become a thing, and we started installing them everywhere. They started taking all these large bells down. The only correlate I can think of is the bells were cracking or damaging these windows, because when glass windows first came out, they were very expensive and they weren't easy to make. But I don't know. It's Are you familiar with the narrative at all as to why they removed all the bells from the big, large bells from city halls, villages, town centers, central towers of villages and towns and all that? Because they did do it. There's old photographs showing whole fields full of thousands of bells that have been removed.
Yeah, no, I discovered the Tartarian narrative back in 2018 and became completely obsessed. So
Yeah.
I've watched a great many hours of videos on old world architecture and bells and organs and, really, really fascinated with that whole story. A couple things, like what I observed, one of the things was about how this story about how the bells kept the demons away, right? That they introduced coherence and order and electromagnetic energy. I recently just saw something about how there was some kind of device under the bells that could collect the electromagnetic energy that they were generating, which I found really interesting. I hadn't come across that perspective before.
Yeah.
But the tuning forks, in a way, are kind of like a bell. It's just a little handheld bell. And I have this one particular frequency right here, 222 hertz. That's very bell-like. And I do feel like, when we talk about people and their demons, they're demons, which means that they're parts of themselves that are fractured, that are not whole, that are acting out in certain ways. What sound healing does is it invites a sense of wholeness, a sense of deep presence, a sense of inner unity. And if you have a village or community with all of these bells, that's inviting that presence, that coherence, that unity, that clarity on a regular basis to people who are there. And we've seen even like cartoons and stuff about like the demons hearing the bells and being like, get the bells away from me. There's a lot of stories about how they were melted down into munitions for both World War I and World War II.
Well, I'm of the opinion that many different stories about the same thing can all be true.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean is the bells did provide healing. People probably went to church not just for the divine information to feed their soul, but their actual bodies healed from the pipe organs. They healed from the bells that were tolling. They probably throughout the service, they probably had a bell portion of the service. Remember, many choirs all had handbells and they would chime. So I'm all on board with the Tartarian narrative and that the bells were, frequency healing and all that. But equally so, it doesn't make it untrue that a lot of bells became a problem once we started manufacturing glass windows. Now a lot of rich people are pissed because every time they ring that bell, their new windows fracture or crack or whatever. At the same time, it could also be true that since they're taking the bells down, we may as well use the metal and recast it into something that's useful. So all these different things could be absolutely true. They don't negate each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jason, what's your opinion as far as like evil in the world, right? The agents of chaos and destruction and wanting to keep beauty and healing and wholeness and harmony at bay and have chaos reign, which certainly seems to have been going on for hundreds of years now, if not longer.
Well, I believe that we live not in a real reality. We live in a perceivable reality. Right now, you and I are having an open discussion. We're absolutely free to. Nobody's telling us what we can and cannot say. And we have many souls listening to us. And to me, that's absolute freedom. We are in a perceivable reality where the media has us hijacked into a scenario where they want to convince us that we're slaves when we're actually not. It's a contract-based society, so we fall ourselves falling victim to many things that other people haven't fallen victim to. So we envy and there's strife, and sometimes we're pissed off that we have become susceptible to scenarios that other people are free of because they didn't sign that contract, whether it was tacit or if it was overt. But I believe that we live in a perceivable reality, and it's many things for many people. And I believe that we're all immortal souls flowing through a construct that's not actually here. It's just perceivably so. But while we're here, we have to obey the laws of the construct. And these are things that we can tap into to facilitate whatever it is we're trying to do in this experience. You have tapped into the fact that part of this construct is based off frequency, and you're using that to your advantage. I, for one, I'm a chronologist, and everything fascinates me when I can process information sequentially. And each individual soul has its own purpose for being here. And when they find that purpose, that's when they're vibrating highest on whatever that frequency is that gives them that vitality and that life and that ability to move through and flow through this experience on their way to their next experience. And I believe that I've been here many times, that you've been here many times, and this is all a part of the growth process. And like in our reading before this video, when you said that you sensed that there was a very unusual link between God and I, and that it was almost like a brotherhood of humor, you nailed it. Because I have told my community many times, I regard God as more, not a father figure, but more like a brother. I have cussed God out. I have challenged God. I've told God several times, all you got to do is physically appear in my presence. I'm going to beat your ass for putting me through this shit. I've done that. But it's a personal relationship, and 100% I know that the spirit has a sense of humor, and I know that this experience is only codified with protocols that make it hard, that make it seem nefarious. But that's all it is coding. Once you understand that the construct is basically, you're immune from it. If you're just moored to source, then everything in here becomes something of amusement. It's no longer something to be feared.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, I think I used the word camaraderie.
Yeah, that's the word you used. Yeah,
to describe that relationship, and that's very evident, and has had a particular tone and feel, that spoke to me.
Well, I mean, that's just my personal experience. I believe the oversoul is going to match whatever it is the individual soul projects. If the individual soul requires a pious, strict by the rules book, all ever polite type of deity, then I promise you the oversoul is going to match that and become that for the individual. For me, it wasn't required. For me, it was a relationship and everything that goes with it. And I can't be in a relationship unless I can be honest. And if sometimes I have to just unleash and be disrespectful in order to be me, then the oversoul will honor that. And I've never found anything otherwise.
Yeah, so true. I received very clear guidance from God that I needed to bring this work out into the world. And it happened in a very interesting way. At the time, I was making kettle corn, of all things. I had started a business making kettle corn, and I had the first kettle corn in stores. There were many years we couldn't get kettle corn in stores, and then it became a big thing. But in 2004, I launched my own kettle corn business, and was selling them like mad, was in the process of getting ready to scale up. I was going to blow it up and sell it to Frito-Lay and retire. That was my plan. And that was at the time that I encountered this information in the field, and I started mapping the field, and my therapeutic outcomes became very, very dramatic. And I started, wondering about it. But at the same time, I did not want to wander off in the world and be like, hey, tuning forks, because I just knew I was going to be such a target. And so I didn't want to go there. And then one day I received this, what I call my prime directive, this very clear download, like through the mail slot, but like certified mail, not a Post-it note. And it came with a very clear list of, it said, you need to go to college and get degrees and learn and teach about sound. You need to advance the science and understanding of how this works. You need to get into college textbooks. You need to start a school, awaken an army, and cover the earth with Biofield tuning. And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, no, 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 I'm not going to be that person. I am not going to do that job. I gave God quite a hard time about that one. But after a little while of contemplating it, I realized that I was kind of well suited to the job, and finally acquiesced, sold my popcorn business, and did all the things. I have, and it's taken me a while to learn to not resist, to, because I'd get asked to do something and I'd be like, oh no. And I'd say it's only in the last year or so that I've learned to not do that reflexive no.
I get it. You got to love what you do, or you're just not going to do it well. That's all life in a nutshell. It's just, if you don't love what you do, you're not going to perform. You're not going to perform well. If you don't perform well, you're not going to make your mark in the world. That's just the way it is.
Well, you know what? For me with the forks is that I'm the kind of person that gets bored really easily. I'm always kind of investigating this, that, and the other. But if something isn't like super snappy, I'll move on. And the forks have held me captive for decades. They are endlessly fascinating. I always learn something new. I recently uncovered a new word in the language of emotion that I had never named before. And I had never reflected on what this particular word and this particular sound that it makes in the field means. The word is rancor. And so rancor is sort of like, a lot of people feel rancor towards Donald Trump. It's sort of like a seething, persistent dislike or hatred or disgust with something. People can feel rancor towards themselves or specific body parts, or feel rancor towards a parent who was always punitive or abusive.
In English, the word even feels negative.
Yeah. It does, right? It's rancorous, like rancid. That's kind of where it goes. And when we feel rancor, regardless of whether we feel it towards ourselves or towards someone else, what it does is it puckers the linings of our tissues. So like mucous membranes, the linings of our veins and arteries, the lining of our digestive tract. It takes tissue that's supposed to be smooth and flowing, and it puckers it. And I recently made a video that said the hidden emotion that's keeping you stuck, because tissue that's gone into that kind of formation can't flow. And so it was a whole interesting exploration into that word, into that sentiment, into how that vibration moving through our body informs our tissues and stops us from healing and getting unstuck. And it's so interesting that regardless of whether it's towards self or other, it has the exact same impact on the tissues.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with someone's emotional state causes all kinds of ulceratic problems, diverticulitis. To me, these things are first begun in the mind, and then the emotional state, and then the physical body. The physical body follows. Yeah. So it's no different than creativity. You would think that I'm speaking about something that's just the opposite, but the principles of creativity, everything begins in the mind, and then the mind creates the necessary emotion to give the thought fuel. The thought, which is nothing but a construct that's released into the field, now empowered by emotion, will induce behavior. Then behavior is something the physical avatar follows through with the emotion and the thought, and next thing you know, you've created something ex nihilo. You brought something that did not exist and made something that now does exist in the field for other people to experience and enjoy as well, whether it be good or bad. So creation is the personal creative ability, the co-creator relationship we have with the oversoul to bring new things in the construct, to me, is the exact same operating principle as when we self-inflict ourselves with physical maladies because we are mentally or emotionally unstable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was just this morning, I was using, let me just grab it. I was using one of my weighted tuning forks. So I've invented a number of forks of specific frequencies that nobody else had made. And one fork in particular is based in the Schumann resonance. So the background electromagnetic pulse of around 7.83 hertz. You can't make a 7.83 hertz tuning fork because it would be like 4 feet long. The lower the frequency, the longer the fork.
Okay.
So what I did was I had prototypes made of all of these different harmonics or multiples of 7.83, and I played with them. And this one is 7.83 times 12, and it has a particularly pleasing quality to it. Like other forks you can activate and put on yourself, and after a little bit you feel done with them. But this one is just so pleasing that you can do it for a really long time. And this morning, my husband was saying that his spine was bothering him. So I laid him down on the bed and I did what I call a spine slide. So this has a little boot on the end. It's called a contour boot. We have a few different boots that I've invented. This one's just smooth and easy. And I was running it down his spine, and you can really feel when you get to certain vertebrae. Like I'd love to be able to do this to your neck, Jason. When you get to certain vertebrae, you can feel the quality of the vibration through the fork. And so when you hit an anomalous vibration, if it's vibrating too high or too fast, or if it's really low or slow, you just stay there. And then the spine kind of autocorrects. It's really pretty neat how responsive the spine is, because you're giving it both a reflection of its own incoherence as well as a coherent input to balance itself against. And so I was sliding it up and down his spine, getting all the vertebrae in order. And as I was doing it, I was like, this is really cool. Like I invented this fork, this boot, and this technique. And it's so helpful, right? It all came from my mind, but here it is. And I've sold thousands and thousands of these, and so many people have gotten relief from it. So it's such an amazing thing.
What is aluminum? What is that? What is the alloy?
It's an aluminum alloy. Yeah.
Okay.
My unweighted ones, this one's 144 hertz is another frequency that I found really useful. It's such a cool number, 144, right? And it's such a useful frequency, both as a weighted and an unweighted fork. But my unweighted forks are made from a unique alloy. So what happened when I first started doing this field combing process, and I was getting into extremely traumatic memories. I mean, some of the things that people have been through, you just can't even believe the stories that people have in their field. And the fork really reveals it, like the intensity, the depth. It allows me as a practitioner to really, truly empathize with somebody's story without them having to use a lot of words to tell me about it. But what it was doing was it was putting my forks into such distortion that it was creating micro cracks in the metal. And as my practice got busier and I was using them more, my forks started to blow. They started to lose their, like how guitar strings wear out, right? You get metal fatigue, and then it doesn't sound the way it's supposed to anymore. It would develop a buzz. And so I went through a period of just destroying forks left and right until the manufacturer at Medivibe decided to work with me to create an alloy that would stand up to this kind of stress. And so over the course of a year and a half, he made me all these different alloys, all these different gauges, and I worked with all of them. And this particular alloy was like the last man standing and is absolutely designed for this work.
So do you know what the chemical? I mean, did he add nickel to it? I mean, there's things you can add to aluminum to make it resilient.
Yeah, there is, but it's like proprietary. Like even I don't know the recipe.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, but my forks sound and feel really different than other forks that are out there. I'm the only one that makes them out of this alloy, and they're like instrument quality. They ring loud. Like people go buy cheap forks on Amazon, but they're so junky. They're not sound healing tools. So if anybody's like, oh, I'd like to check this out, I'm gonna go buy a $15 fork on Amazon. It's not gonna do the same thing.
No.
The frequency that I really learned the language of vibration, where I really came to understand it, is 174 hertz. And this is sort of like my primary field combing fork. And it's just the right frequency to just hear all these undertones and overtones. And especially in this alloy, like they really come through. People are always amazed. It's so fun to kind of teach people how to do this, because even if they've never passed a fork through the field before, they get stopped at these sticky points. You feel this magnetic grab, and you're like, whoa, that's so interesting.
That's exactly how the dowsers explain their experience.
Yeah. It's tangible. It's not so subtle that we might be making it up. It's like even somebody who doesn't even consider themselves sensitive can feel it. Recently, I had a couple of friends here, and I had them learn for the first time on each other. And one of them was extremely kinesthetic. He could feel it in his body, because as a provider, that pain or what memory or difficult thing, whatever it is, that is being broadcast into the room from the fork informs your body too. Like when I'm working with somebody, even if it's over Zoom, like I'll get pain in my body, I'll get nauseous, all of these things will come up as my signal resonates with whatever the fork is encountering and broadcasting. So one person was extremely kinesthetic. He felt it in his fingertips, he felt it in his body. But the other person was extremely auditory, and he could totally hear all of the changes, which is how I was. Like when I was learning, I was very auditory, and I would be like, wow, that just got staticky, or that, my ears were super tuned to the subtleties. So when I first started teaching, I started teaching that way, but then discovered that most people are actually kinesthetic, not auditory. So then I had to kind of switch it around and be like, pay attention to your fingertips, your breath, your body. But regardless of the pathway, like pretty much everybody is able to pick it up and to do it.
So I have a question. I had a unique experience because it was only recently, within the last year, that I have been outside my comfort zone in my research, having people on my channel or in my personal life, like astrologers and tarot readers. I had a tarot reader blow my mind a couple of times. I had an astrologer though that was about to yesterday do a horary chart to help me find my wallet, because I had tore my entire property up looking for my wallet. I lost it yesterday, and it set me back. And it just blows my mind. The astrologer out of the blue, because I have a guest on my property right now, and he's been helping me out on some Archaix projects. And Whit, he's listening right now. But Whit was with me when the astrologer just sent me a message, and she says, "Hey man, beware, man. Today's got some really weird energy, man. Your natal chart shows today's a day not to really make any big decisions on anything. It's just some really weird stuff. Just be safe." So I'm like, well, you could have told me, an hour earlier, because I've completely lost my wallet, all my ID, my credit cards, and debit cards, everything's in here, and this is how I spent yesterday. I spent yesterday going through my entire property, vehicles, backtrack. I even went to a restaurant, and we wanted them to look at the security footage and all that. I'm like, there's only one place I've been, was that restaurant and my property. So I spent the entire day looking for this, and at the end of the day, I discharged it. I says, you know what, whatever, man. I'm just going to go back to the DMV, go get me a new ID. It's nothing. I'll go to the bank and I'll get online, and I'll just a day of aggravation, and I'll just get all this stuff back on whatever. I'm not worried about what I lost in the wallet. Although I was kind of upset that I have this collector's item Kennedy $50 from 1963 when he was assassinated, and it's embedded in my wallet. And I was like, man, it took a loss, big deal. Once I discharged it, within 5 minutes I found it. And as soon as the energy wasn't there anymore. The energy, once I decided, okay, cool, done. I'm gonna move on. I don't waste it a whole day. I'm not wasting tomorrow looking for it. I'm just gonna go ahead and accept the loss. Within 5 minutes, it was found. It was totally camouflaged. It is the exact color of an antique chest that I have on the floor in an area that people walk by, and many people should have seen it. I've had traffic, and no one saw it, and it's like hidden in plain sight, but totally camouflaged. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you this is I've had a change of heart because I have had these experiences, and astrologers, tarot readers have pretty much blown my mind. But it's also, I'm gonna have to temper that. Your field, tarot, astrology, these are fields, NDEs, the out of body experiences. These are fields of high grifter activity. There's so many people trying to make their dollar, and they just make up stuff. So I have to put them to the test. I have to, and it's just, so that leads me to my deal. I wanted to ask you a question. Do you think that what you do has anything at all, is there any correlate or crossover with auras? Because I had somebody kind of blow my mind who claims that they can read auras. They can read colors and the colors of the auras, and they told me something I want. Does sound produce color for those who can read auras?
Yeah. So the aura and the biofield and the human energy field are all the same thing. It's the biomagnetic field of your body. It's all, you know, different words pointing at the same thing. One of the things that is said is that that light is and color is visible sound, and sound is audible light or color. There's just different octaves of its expression. So if somebody can see your field and read your field, they're doing the same thing that I'm doing with a tuning fork. Like, that information is there. It's there. It is absolutely objectively there in your field. And there are just different ways to approach reading it. And it's really interesting. So that as you are as a focal point that is vibrating, generating all of the information of your day, of your life, and you are laying it down in these standing waves in your field, you're also laying it down in the collective field, in the akasha, right, in the ether. So that your memories become part of the collective field. It's like that information is present. So what is a psychic doing? They're just tapping into that information field where all is written.
Well, I had a woman tell me that she sees every single person puts off an aura and a color. And it's her experience that they're often putting off more than one. And there seems to be a color attached to them. And there seems to be a temporal color that's only attached to who they are right now, as if their emotional state or whatever. And she sees both. And I just kind of laughed it off. I never even communicated with her again. But she had told me that over dinner about a year and a half ago. And I never let it go. So I just asked her out of the blue. I said, okay, well, I mean, if you see all these colors and all these people, you know, all this around, what, I mean, the emperor has no clothes. The one elephant in the room is what have you seen with me? So, cause we were talking about different people in the restaurant, and I'd never heard anything about the auras. And she said that my aura was very unique. She says, your aura is gold. And it's with splashes of purple. But you have a dark shadow that keeps moving around, and she says that's your temporal one. It's nothing to worry about, but there's something really bothering you right now. And a year and a half ago, something was bothering me. And I remember thinking about it, but I never invited her on the channel. I never. Back then, I was still in my transitional phase about what I thought about all this stuff.
Well, that's really interesting, because I would have said the same thing. I would have said yellow gold. When you were bringing that up, I'm like, it's sort of yellow gold. And also remember when I first started working on you, as soon as I tuned into you, I'm like, you have this storm going around in the outer edge of your field. Like, that was something that I picked up on right away. And I said very often people who have early childhood trauma develop these storms in the outer boundary of their field. And then those patterns will repeat. I was like, oh, this chaos of your early childhood, the vibrational quality and the sound and feel of that is really similar to when you went into prison. And you had said to me earlier that you felt like it was your early childhood experiences that allowed you to survive in prison and keep your mind intact, because you had seen many people go crazy. But there was a vibrational match energetically, like you had already been through a similar kind of extreme difficulty, so that you were familiar with it and you were able to weather that much.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Because like I told you, I saw men's minds fracture. And it's because they weren't prepared. Life had never given them the preparation of going from absolute freedom and never even imagining they'd ever be in prison. You'd be surprised who you meet in prison. People who never thought for a minute they would end up in a prison cell. You know, it's you would be surprised the type of individuals that find themselves there. So yeah, but I was already prepared. You're right. It was an easy transition to make for me. It wasn't one that I liked, but it was still an easy transition. The shock didn't really affect me like it affected other people who were going through something traumatic for the first time in their life.
Yeah. I want to come back to what you said about astrology and share something that I haven't told you yet that you might find of interest. So I started one day when I was meditating. I'm not much of a meditator, but I was just feeling like I need to be quiet and tune in. I had this sudden awareness because up to that point, when I contemplated the biofield, I knew it was a Taurus, but I always kind of thought of it that it was sort of smooth around the outside. And in this particular moment, I got insight and I saw that it wasn't smooth. It was banded like a pumpkin, and that it had 12 bands, and that each of those 12 bands was comprised of 12 strands that seemed like fiber optic light strands. Remember when we were kids, they had those fiber optic lamps?
Right.
And so what that creates is a model of 144 strands of light circulating around the outside of our field and also down through the central channel. Like some people speak to like 144 strand DNA being maybe a fractal of this particular model. So that was interesting to kind of get insight into the 12 bands and how they create these sort of 12 segments like an orange. But that got me thinking about the model of 12 around 1. This is something that we see. I'm sure you've come across this and probably even spoken about it. The 12 Knights of the Round Table, the 12 Disciples of Christ, the 12 gods of the Roman Pantheon, the 12 cranial nerves, right? There's so many of these. But it got me really thinking about the astrological houses. And I discovered very interestingly that I can go into someone's field, and if I have their chart up, and I can walk around the outside of the field, like this part around out here, and all of the luminaries that are present in the natal chart can be accessed through the biofield. And that's a really interesting thing when you think about our electromagnetic bodies and how they are informed by the electromagnetic construct. When we talk about astrology, you're like, oh, but the planets and they're way out there. But they're also fractally present within our own electromagnetic field. And so if you think about these luminaries moving within our own field, the influences of them come much more down to earth and much more immediate. Just like you said, like your astrologer was like, you're in a really bad day today. And you're like, damn, I really did. Right. So to me, it's made astrology have so much more meaning. And the process of actually going in and tuning someone's chart through their biofield, in astrological charts, they talk about hard aspects or oppositions or things like that. You can actually remedy those sorts of oppositions and hard aspects with tuning forks in the biofield. It's sort of mind-blowing to me. This is like this whole process of tuning the chart within the field is just really wild. And like somebody said, the stars are the furthest part of ourselves that we can see, right? So each of our own biofields is a fractal hologram to the larger biofield that we're all part of.
Yeah, I agree. The interface between the psyche and the simulation, this interface being the macro to the micro, that's why it's another data point for me that we are in a perceivable reality, not a real reality. And that everything that can be found in the construct itself is to a limited degree already found in the makeup of the soul. I believe that in the Renaissance period that our greatest thinkers were trying to put these thoughts into their illustrations and in their designs when they were doing the anthropomorphic man, showing man as being basically the bridge between two infinite realities going forward and backward in time, and that the bridge itself was the constellations. You remember the old Renaissance pictures showing the human form in all the different constellations that governed over the different areas of the man? Yeah, the concept goes back pretty far. I don't know if it goes all the way back to Almagest and Ptolemy, but assigning constellations to the different areas of the body does go back to at least the Middle Ages. It's an old concept. Yeah, you haven't actually done a demonstration. I mean, we're not actually doing a reading on anybody, but you could give my audience, what do the different tuning forks sound like?
Yeah, sure. We can do that. So let's go through, we'll go lowest frequency to highest frequency. So I have 5 weighted forks. So for those of you who don't know anything about tuning forks, these are weights, also known as barrels, tines, and handle or stem. And weighted forks are primarily used on the body. I do also use them in the field. And as you're combing them through the field, you can feel how the quality of the vibration changes depending on what kind of information you're hitting in the standing waves. It's very tangible. This is not subtle. Like you can really tell when you hit a spot that's turbulent. You can even see the tines move differently. You can absolutely feel it in your fingertips. I can put a weighted fork on somebody's sternum and read their heart rate variability, the flows, and I can get so much information, almost like a stethoscope, through the quality of the vibration. Very LiDAR-like. Like I think if I wasn't a Biofield tuning practitioner, I'd be a LiDAR operator because I just have this love of revealing what is invisible. So I have 5 weighted forks. This pair is based in the Fibonacci sequence. The idea that our etheric template or our blueprint is geometric and based in phi, right? The golden mean, the human body is constructed in phi. So this is the 11th and 12th position in the Fibonacci sequence. It is 89 and 144. And I use these on the body to help remind the body of its order, of its own intrinsic order. So this is a really useful pair. And then my other weighted fork is based in the Schumann resonance as well. So this is the 7th and 8th harmonic of the Schumann resonance. And these are pretty cool because they create a binaural beat. So for those of you that aren't familiar with that, the brain does this really cool thing. When you play one frequency in one ear and one frequency in the other, it creates brain waves that are the frequency of the difference between them. So this creates a binaural beat of the Schumann resonance, which is your brain in the sort of alpha theta cusp. It's a place of like quiet, present meditation. So if somebody comes in and they're all kerfluffled from a traffic incident, and they're all like, I'll just sit them down and just do this for a minute or two. And that absolutely takes the brain out of like stormy beta and into this much quieter state. And, there are all kinds of like videos and YouTube and things like that with digitally produced sounds, which I'm really not a huge fan of. I'm very much an analog acoustic kind of gal. Okay, so now we'll go into the 5 unweighted forks. So what's interesting is that this is 144 hertz weighted, and this is 144 hertz unweighted. And they're both 144 hertz, but they're really different animals. I created this particular frequency during COVID, actually, because what I was finding was that there was such a blanket of fear had descended on humanity that it was making my usual fork, my 174, wasn't cracking the nut. I was like, I need a bigger nut cracker to get through this sort of stiffness that had arisen in the collective. So I invented this 144. So let's just sit and listen to it. I'll strike each one a few times, and everybody just be curious. Like if you were listening to a piece of music, you're not necessarily analytical. Your brain isn't wondering how it's working. You're just kind of listening, right? And maybe it's a moving piece of music and you feel yourself being moved. And it sort of operates on the same principles. Okay, here we go. Okay, so how this is sounding is reflecting your audience in a lot of ways, Jason, who are very intellectual. People have a tendency to not breathe as much as they should be. So what I'm really perceiving in this fork is kind of a breath hold, a little bit of a lockdown, that there's head, intellect forward, body kind of secondary, body and breath secondary. And so the tone is coming across as sort of stiff, rigid. There's a little bit of fear underneath it. there's not a lot of like openness in the tone. So I'm going to do a few more. And those of you who are watching, knowing that, maybe kick back a little bit, open up your breath a bit more, just kind of let the sound come in and create some space. And especially exhale all the way and then some. Okay, I'll do one more of these. So I don't know if you can hear that because my heat just came on, but just over the course of those few strikes, the tone went from being kind of diminished and pinched to this last one. It sounded more open. It sounded more resonant. Now I do a lot of these small demonstrations on podcasts and things like that. And if you're wondering what you might notice by the end of these 5 forks, it's likely that you will just feel a bit more relaxed, or maybe some pain that you've had might diminish. Okay, so this next one we're going to do is 174 hertz. This is the sort of workhorse fork of Biofield tuning. And again, we'll just listen to this and see what we notice.
It's almost like a Christmas bell.
Yeah. And this one, this is getting some nice resonance, right? The 144, I often use them in this order, the 144 to kind of go in and break things up. And then the 174 starts to almost like bloom space inside of you. And sound opens up space between molecules. So the way that this works is simply taking the compression, the tension out of the system and inviting more spaciousness. The only thing that claim that I make is that it helps you to relax. Right? But as I told you earlier, Jason, I really come to the conclusion that most ailments are tension-based. Any ailment you can think of is some kind of pattern of tension in the body. It's usually there is some kind of trauma response. And so if we can coax those tensions into releasing and relaxing, then the body is at more liberty to repair itself.
I like that one.
Yeah, I like this one too, because it's, you know, when I first introduced the 144, I gave ones to my 10 teachers, and they were like, Eileen, what? Like, this fork is a beast. It would make some of the funkiest sounds. It was, you know, we almost put a warning label on it that because it was so wild. What's interesting is that it got tame over the course of a year. Like what felt like an unwieldy beast sort of got tame, and I don't really understand how or why that happened. All right, we'll do one more of the 174. Good. All right. Okay. So then the next one is my most recent creation. This is 222 hertz.
Wow, that came through the speakers loud.
Yeah, it came off the, I don't have my good buffer speaker or a microphone on. See, that one came off the puck different. So part of it is the strike for sure. It's really hard to strike them completely consistently all the time. But I find that each activation tends to interact with some kind of energy that's present, right? So this one, now this fork is going really dull here, which I find interesting because the 222 is an invitation to presence. It's like a temple bell. It's like a just be here now, right? But again, what I'm feeling is that there's a lot of questing or striving or digging in the people who are listening, right? And that's great. I mean, Jason is such a great resource for learning, right? But there's a kind of a hunger to more, or learn more, or what's down the road or what's around the corner, and not as much ease in just a gentle, simple being. Right. So I just want to invite you, Jason, and everybody else to just really come into presence just into this moment, right? Not only are you listening to this fork, but maybe other sounds in your environment. How does your body feel resting against whatever it's resting against? It's just an invitation to this deep presence of nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to learn. Just be safe and willing to be here in this moment. Good, and I'll do one more of those. Right, and maybe some of you are yawning or you're feeling your breath open up. Right, and that last strike had a lot more resonance. It had more dynamic richness to it. Yeah, good. Okay, we got two more. So this next one is 417 hertz.
Yeah, that one gets up there.
Yeah, it's very penetrating. Good, and then we'll do 528 hertz. So this is the highest frequency I have. This one will really get into like where there's deep tension or tight knots. Right, so I'm going to do this one a few times, and anybody who's got going on in your body, just direct the sound to wherever your tension is. Just breathe it into it. I'll do one more. Good. Good. What do you notice, Jason, from that little bit? Oh, you're not very good at it. Jason told me he's not very somatically aware. I shouldn't ask.
I did tell you. I mean, we went for an hour and 45 minutes before the show started, and I did tell you that I am not a good subject for this type, and it's because I wear armor that I cannot disrobe. It's I am very impressed with the information that you elicited, when you did this, but it would be, in all fairness, you would get much further with someone else, because I spent my entire life hiding behind armor, and every piece of information I come in contact with, every other soul that I come in contact with, they're under scrutiny until I let my guard down. So you did that. I'm very impressed, but still, you would get so much better traction if you were to use someone else as an I'm just being brutally honest.
No, I totally get it. And I've certainly encountered personalities like you before. But I will say that if you were to come to my office once a week for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, you would be way more attuned to the subtle vibrations and how they're impacting on your body. Right? Because you already have buy-in, you get that what I'm doing is legit. It fits into all these models. I was able to determine things that I shouldn't be able to otherwise. And so just like anything else, the more that you're exposed to something, the more it softens you up, the more you become aware of how it impacts you. So your armoring or your, is not like a life sentence. It's certainly
right. I get that.
We could work through if we wanted to.
I've already though developed a curiosity about, you're playing with different tones, different frequencies. I don't know the full extent of all the tools you work with, but to me, I understand the power of building up resonance. And you would start with a lower tone, and then once somebody is completely vibrating on that tone, whatever it is that's trying to be accomplished, I can see the value of, while that original tone has been going for a while, and then it's reinitiated, and your subject or the person you're trying to help gets in that flow state, and they're vibrating on that tone, and you were to just switch out the tool for one that takes it just a little bit higher. And then I can see how you can keep switching these out, and you can get somebody vibrating on a frequency, and you can take them for a vibrational ride higher and higher and higher and higher. And I'm wondering if you've ever experimented like that. Have you ever done an exercise like that instead of just sticking with the same frequency or same tone? Have you ever experimented like if you're going to try healing, if somebody had a malady that they wanted, and have you ever tried to take them into a vibrational state that was just far higher than the one you initiated when they first sat down?
Well, yeah, remember I've been doing this for 30 years. So
okay, I haven't heard you mention such an exercise.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried so many different approaches, right? I mean, even the forks that I have are kind of fun to put together. And each combination elicits a different response. Like the 144, this fork is like, these are all the things that are wrong with you. These are all the distortions. These really, really will reveal physical places where you're out of integrity, emotional, energetic, like the distortions come through so clear in this one. The 222 kind of loves you just the way you are. And so I call them the peacekeepers. It's like, this is all that's wrong with you, and I love you just the way you are. And so when you use them together, it's a really interesting combination. So let's just listen to that.
Well, you know that 222, 444, 666, 888, 1110, this is a different bandwidth on the same 5 frequency, that 144 is on. Yeah, I have charts on phi and how they're broken down in the Fibonacci series, and it's very unusual that we do have the Fibonacci series represents phi numerically, but this 1.618 chart is amazing because there's another set of numbers that matches it in a different bandwidth, and it's 222, it's 444, 666, 888. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've seen these charts side by side.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Well, that's interesting. So it's sort of embodied in these forks in a way, the 222 and the 144.
Yeah, you got independent confirmation.
Yeah. I mean, it's just my own observation of like, what happens if I play with these two together? Like, how does this work? How does this sound? How does this make me feel? How does this make other people feel? I'll do one more of those. And so I feel like it just, again, opens up the midline of the body, opens up space where maybe there was collapse or compression.
I wonder what kind of music was being played. Are you familiar with the traditions like in the 1800s, Tibetan monks would chant, and then all of them would just barely put their fingers on a boulder. And as they were chanting and building crescendo, Westerners would sit there and watch in amazement as they're not lifting the boulder. They got their hands on top of the boulder, and that they would chant and chant and chant and chant. And it would be levitation 2 or 3 feet into the air until the chant was broken and the rock would fall. But this is just a modern day example of what is explained in the traditions about these giant boulders and megaliths and table stones that have been found all over the world that are inexplicable. How in the hell do they get a 20-ton rock on top of these 3 other boulders? How do they make this dolmen right here? And the traditions was singing, that crowds of people would come and they would sing, and it would be the lift in the song that raised the boulders and the megaliths. These are very old traditions, but just like Stonehenge, giants, people think the traditions about giants, carried the boulders. No, it was giant songs. It was the singing of the giants that brought the stones together for Stonehenge. There's a lot of traditions about music being the way that great heavy weights and stones were transported in ancient times. So I'm wondering if those are traditions that are like, maybe there was a technology that we don't know about that from a distance, cargo cult phenomenon, people were listening, locals were listening, and from a distance, a more technologically advanced culture had come in and they could hear the machines and they sounded like music, but they were making these giant rocks float through the air. I don't know. I'm just going with what's in our traditional records.
Yeah. Well, sound waves have levity. A sound wave falls upward. And if you've ever been standing next to a steel drum band, you can feel the water in your body doing that.
This is why objects tend to float during subsidence. Subsidence is called, I'm not subsidence, but liquefaction. So when earthquake activity is happening, even though objects on the ground, because the ground liquefies from vibration, objects on the ground tend to sink. But objects not attached to the ground, but like are on tabletops or on people's porches, they have been seen to float or hover in the air during earthquake activity.
Well,
So
that's interesting. Yeah, because all those infrasonic waves are creating lift. So it makes perfect sense. I mean, there's so many acoustic levitation videos on YouTube, but they're usually like little styrofoam balls or something.
right.
But certainly, our understanding of the levity of sound absolutely speaks to if there was a deeper, more sophisticated understanding of it, like how things can be lifted. And certainly with voices, if you're in a contained space and this chant is building and building and building, that space is filling with the sound waves. I was trying to create a quiet space to do recording in, and I did some research going into little soundproof booths. And after I was in this little booth, and I had only struck the tuning fork a few times when I had to open the door, because the sound waves were bouncing around within it and creating pressure. So if you think about all of these voices building and building and building, yeah, it's absolutely going to be able to lift things. There's so much to discover with sound. When I first started working with my master's thesis and doing research, I found very little information academically on therapeutic sound. There was stuff about music and about like Reiki and healing touch. There was very little to be found on sound. And I realized that part of the reason why I wasn't able to find research on frequency was that so much of it was probably in the hands of DARPA and those kinds of organizations who have been studying frequency in order to use it nefariously instead of therapeutically.
Well, we're seeing more and more research come out now in cymatics, showing the beauty of almost like holographic programming being seen in the music, how it affects the physical world. I believe the trailblazer on the cymatic phenomenon was a Japanese doctor who was showing what water looks like under certain music, under certain frequencies, and certain thought experiments where think tanks were told, a glass of water was put in a room, and a bunch of people in Japan were told to think happy thoughts, thank the water for being what it is, to help them and all that. And in the next room, everybody in that room was told to focus negative energy toward the water, curse it, do all kinds of things. And then when drops were analyzed under a microscope, the Japanese doctor found that the structuring of the water had changed to comport with it was beautiful patterns on the love, and it was disjointed, hard right angles in the patterning on the hate.
Yeah.
But
and it's interesting to think that our bodies are mostly water, and people are often thinking hateful thoughts to themselves. And it's not even your water.
You went right to the heart of the matter, didn't you?
Yeah. It's so important to understand that any water in your body is borrowed water, and that it's very uncool to be uncool to the water that you happen to be stewarding, because it does take those impressions.
I'm pretty big on what type of water I drink. I'm gonna make me some right now.
So what is the name of that device you have there?
Don't give me the line. It's called hydro, but it puts more hydrogen in your water.
Okay, it probably structures it. Yeah.
You know what? I'm already. I refuse to drink tap water. I haven't drank tap water in 10 years. This is just bottled water that then I run through here.
Nice.
I wish I was living far out in the mountains where I could drink nothing but rainwater and snow melt coming down, these freshwater mountain streams, but I'm not that lucky right now.
Yeah, that is the best source for sure.
Oh yeah, mineral rich water. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually have a cymoscope that was created by John Stuart Reed. And it's a device where you put water in a little dish, and then you've got a speaker underneath it. And
yeah.
And I've created a number of Well, I recorded an album last year, and the first song from the album is on my YouTube channel. It's called Nervous System Reset. And anybody's curious about cymatics, you can go and check that out. And what cymatics really shows us is that sound is containing complex geometric information. This idea of longitudinal, sound waves bouncing along through space is so limited to what sound really is, because sound propagates spirally, spherically. It contains complex geometric information and electromagnetic properties, right? And so cymatics really allows us to see that the complexity that is in a sound wave.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing. I know I'm a firm believer that healing can be done through sound, but I will take it to another level, and I believe in the power of words because of what's behind words and the attention and the voice that elicits those words. So while I can agree that you can heal somebody with a tuning fork, if they're open to that and they're receptive to it, but I'm equally of the faith that an individual who actually cares can actually heal somebody just by speaking to them the very things that they need to hear, because it's going to change something about their own spiritual frequency that's going to cause the healing. It's not the person speaking, it's the person reacting to it. I'm not a Christian, but I find no fault with the teachings of Jesus. And I noticed that over and over and over in the biblical gospel narrative, people are amazed of Jesus healing and all this. And this is a huge selling point for Christianity, the miracles of Christ. But it seems to be ignored that in almost every incident when somebody was healed, Jesus equally rebuked them and told them that it wasn't me, it was your faith that healed you. And over, he put it back on the individual, showing that this is something that has to be received. I could have never just given it to you. So, yeah, this changes the dynamic. I'm not taking away from what you do. What I'm saying is there's an interactive dynamic here. When people come to you for what you offer, they're going to have to come to you with the idea in mind that they're fully invested in the fact that what you're doing from them, if received by them, would work. Because if they're coming with that doubt and they're coming like I said earlier, the armor, then there's no way that what you're doing is going to have an effect, because they're not going to resonate. And that's what this is all about, being in resonance. So yeah, I'm on board, but at the same time, I'm still wrestling through a lot of this, because when I set out to basically go on this mission, this life mission of mine to educate people on the true history and nature of our reality, I was stringently against anything that even remotely sounded occult, mystic, anything like that. But the more I immerse myself into the idea of simulation theory, that we're in some type of beautiful, amazing spiritual holographic experience, the more I have to entertain other ideas and concepts that don't conflict. So I'm on board with what you're saying.
Well, and the thing is, at the end of the day, this is not occult. It's not woo-woo. It's physics. Like, the tuning forks operate on the physics principles of resonance and entrainment. They initially resonate with the information that's present in the standing wave, and then they entrain it, because a strong coherent signal will overtake and entrain a weak incoherent signal. So this is all physics interactions that are happening. It's tangible, and it fits into these other models that we're aware of. I don't see anything metaphysical or pseudoscientific about what's going on. We know the body has an electric current running through it. That means it must have a magnetic field, and people want to argue about that. But to me, that denial of the magnetic field is the same kind of denial of the electricity in the body that we knew about in the 1800s, or probably, way before as well. So this to me, even though tuning force in your energy field seems to be, metaphysical or occult or whatever, it's not. It follows laws of science, laws of nature that we already understand.
Yeah, I agree. Have you read the material, like Dale Pond? goes off into Rife. He explains Rife's life and work. He explains Reichenbach's life work and his ideas. And Dale Pond is, I think he's still alive today, but he's got some pretty profound books on sympathetic vibratory physics. So I've read his material. I think I even sent him an email and he didn't respond. I believe Big John sent him an email and asking him if he would like to come on to Archaix. And I don't know if he responded or not, but sympathetic vibratory physics touches upon a lot of the concepts that we've talked about in this video.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's if something works and is right. When I was moving the tuning fork through and hitting the magnetic blobs and moving them, right? I'm like, if this works, there has to be a law of nature that explains it. Or the first time I did a distance session and the hologram of the person I was working with appeared, even though I didn't believe in it and I didn't think it would work. Right. But then it did. And I was able to read their field and adjust their field. And I was like, well, if this is possible, there has to be a law of nature that makes it possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a great chat. It's been an awesome chat. It's I do feel pretty good. But again, I'm going to have to present that armor. I'm going to have to put my shield up because I don't know if what we did for an hour and 45 minutes before this show has anything to do with my present state of mind and how I feel. So I'm good. So I can say that, hey man, Eileen McKusick did something awesome for me, or maybe it was already going to be an awesome day for me at all. I don't know. I'm gonna let my community decide that for me.
Great. Well, I'll check in with you tomorrow, Jason, too, just to see how
Absolutely.
you're post tune-up and all of that.
Absolutely.
But I really enjoyed this too. It's great to hang out with you. I really love the fact that you are skeptical, that you are, have such an analytical mind. I love all the work that you've done. I've enjoyed a lot of your videos very much. And I really love the one you did on the Chronicles of Narnia, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I have the third one coming out this December, this month.
I'll be all over that. I loved those books as a kid. So definitely keep up the good work. And I'm really looking forward to seeing whatever it is that your next level is that you're going to after you get all these videos uploaded that you're working.
Once I get all this research out there to where I don't have to babysit it anymore, I am going to the next level. Believe me, this is not it for me. YouTube is a stepping stone. I'm always going to do it, but I am heading somewhere. Nice. There's no doubt. No doubt. So anything you would like to address my audience with? I do have all your material linked in the description box, and it will also be in the pinned comment once this video's over.
All right. Well, I've got a YouTube channel. I've got this series called Sonic Sundays that is 30 free tunings and conversations about sort of challenging, delicate topics. So that's there as a resource. I also have free audio recordings on my website. We offer training in biofield tuning. I've got all my beautiful tuning forks online and accessories. At biofieldtuning.com, there is a find a practitioner button if you'd like to receive a session. I don't do very many. So please don't ask me to be your first choice. There's lots of other good tuners out there.
So you've networked a lot. So when people contact you, you're basically referring them to people you've already trained.
Yeah, for the most part, I have another book in the works, actually 2 other books in the works. And starting January, I'm going to go back and pick up my PhD research. I dropped out. I'm a PhD dropout. And so I'm going to go back and finish my PhD. I think that's the plan.
I'm just teasing.
Well, you have multiple PhDs in your own realm there. That's for sure.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. There's lots of resources. My books are really easy reads and they're both on Audible. I definitely recommend Tuning the Human Biofield if this has gotten you curious and interested. I really go into plasma and ether and all things sound in Tuning the Human Biofield. And I show you, there's a chapter on how to do it. So you can get a 174 hertz tuning fork and a hockey puck. And it works on pets. I was telling Jason that I've helped dogs to get over like fear of thunderstorms and things like that. So pets, plants, and people all benefit.
Listen, I have squirrel feeders on my property. I love to feed the birds and the squirrels. I do it before I brush my teeth in the morning. As soon as I wake up, I go outside because I tend to get up really early, and before the sun comes up, and I go put my peanuts on all the squirrel feeders, because I have squirrel feeders sticking off my trees, and bird feeders and suspended, and hummingbird feeders. And I do this every morning. It's a ritual before I feed my dogs, before I wash my face, take a shower, anything. I get all the feeders done. But do you have a tuning fork that will stop my dogs from trying to chase squirrels?
Probably not.
Man.
I can't override nature.
I got squirrel chases all over my property. I love squirrels, but man, my dogs do too, but for a totally different reason.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds fun. I love that you're taking care of the birds and the squirrels. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I live in the country. I love these animals out here.
Yeah, excellent. All right, Jason, this was such a joy. Thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome. Also, I want my moderators to find, as the video signing out with the trailer. Didn't you do a recent video with Sabrina Wallace?
I did. Yeah, that's on my YouTube channel.
Well, one of my moderators, please post that link in the description box. I mean, in the chat, so it'll be here for the life of the video. My moderators are great, Eileen, and during the course of our discussion, they have continually put your links into the chat because the chat lasts forever. This is people watching the videos. So, I have an outro that's pretty lengthy, and one of my moderators will post. I'm interested in seeing that too. Sabrina has been invited to the channel, and I guess in the future, Big John and Sabrina and I will work out the details of whenever we're going to chat or whatever we're going to chat about. But yeah, she's been invited to talk on Archaix as well.
Excellent. Well, she's a great follow-up because she has an angle on the biofield that's different than mine. But we cover a lot of territory in her and my conversations. So definitely worth checking out. Awesome.
Well, it's been real. I appreciate the tune-up, and I appreciate the show. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. Thank you. We'll see you
until next time. That was a great guest. So like I said, I mean, some things I can all automatically attribute to, there's a lot of material in my personal life that's out there everybody knows, but she kind of nailed three things that would not have been known. So I was very impressed with that. So, but then again, I'm not a disbeliever, guys. I'm just not a practitioner. So I'm very impressed. This went way better than I was anticipating. I was kind of nervous. I'm very, very hardly ever. It is so seldom that I'm nervous about a guest, but I was kind of nervous about this one because I didn't know quite what I was getting into. Ended up being actually a presentation of genius. I was also nervous about John Lamb Lash, but that ended up being great as well. So I'm going to hit my intro. Oh, you guys have a crap load of videos for December. You have no idea. How many videos, because I'm still doing my podcast and I'm still doing my lives. You have an amazing video. Listen, you're not going to believe this. You guys have heard my research on Enoch. You have seen my research on Etana. You have seen my research on Inky. You have seen my research on the date palms. You've seen my research on how these individuals, according to the historical record, they ascended in the sky. You have seen my research on the Great Pyramid, on the Sphinx, the correlates between the Great Pyramid and the Phoenix. You've seen all that in multiple myriads of presentations and in my published books. But you have a video coming out this month. It's going to blow your mind because there's one object from the ancient world that links them all together, and it's an absolutely recent discovery, totally made by accident, because we just recently did a presentation on the ancient sea kings and how they used the handbag symbol as a symbol of authority, but it was way after the Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian times. You have a video coming where all these concepts are linked together in ancient Sumerian and Akkadian art with the handbag. Ancient seals that I blew my mind when I found the handbag, not even being held by anybody, but being the center of attention as Etana flies up into the sky. It's amazing, guys. You have an awesome video coming that links everything together, and the handbag is the key to decoding all of this. It's amazing. This is OG Face Diaper, Wit, and I just bouncing ideas back together, talking about stuff, and I was going through some old images, and I found an image I posted on Archaix in 2020, and I've never seen that image again. It's not even in my files. I was going through my own channel. I was like, what? Wait a minute. So I screenshot it. I ran it through Google Images. I found out where that image came from. I'm looking at the image, and back in 2020, I would have never put these things together. But what you're going to see on this seal has been replicated in multitudes of other Sumerian and Akkadian seals, and it's all focused on the handbag. And what else is in the seal will blow your mind. We put it together. Can't wait for that one, guys. Can't wait for that one. Thank you guys for your support. Awesome guest today. Check out her interview with Sabrina Wallace. And I'm going to go ahead and play me an outro. Let me see here. Let me play this one. Love you guys.